Hi, my name is Robin Miller. Welcome to my show. Today's show is going to be about Women's History Month. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you. Every March is Women's History Month, and it's about women from all walks of life, demographics, of the contributions in history they have made in American society, in the struggles and battles and obstacles they had to overcome to accomplish, a lot of them, their successes. I want to talk about the theme. The theme for 2022 is Women Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. And you get more information at the National Women's History Alliance.org for their logo and other information about Women's History Month. Women Providing Healing. Here we are, still in the pandemic 2 years later. Are we getting better or worse or the same? Who knows? But women, that's the aspect of providing healing during this difficult time. Promoting hope as well, because the pandemic has affected a lot of people from all walks of life. The theme also of women providing healing and promoting hope is about other current events that I will not mention, but you know what they are, but what's going on now around the world. Introduction. Let's talk about what Women's History Month means to you, to girls, to women. For me, I really didn't know much about it until I actually went to college in the 80s. I learned there was events every March about famous women from all walks of life and the contributions they have made. I wish I would have learned more about it while I was at public school, middle school, as well as high school. Why is it important to you? Well, for me, growing up in the 70s, it was start or the middle of the women's rights movement, the second wave for equal pay in the workplace. My role models were like Billie Jean King, who beat Bobby Riggs in the famous tennis match, as well as Shirley Chisholm, one of the first African American congresswomen, as well as Sandra Day O'Connor, who became the Supreme Court Justice, fourth woman on the court under the Reagan administration in the early 80s, as well as Maria Pepe, who was one of the who won her battle through the federal court system to play Little League baseball. So I did have role models, but I had to do research in the library and learn about them in the newspapers. As opposed to today, many girls and women can learn about it through social media. The overview of today's show. I'm going to be showing 4 short videos from YouTube. One is Title of Women's History Month. The other is Remembering Women's History Month, Confession of a Bad Feminist, and the Women's History Quiz. The first video that we're going to show is the story of Women's History Month. Learn how it began in the United States.
Now, kicking off Women's History Month on this March 1st, and we want to turn now to Nightline co-anchor Juju Chang, who's going to give us a little history lesson on how it all grew into the celebration we now know today.
It's March 1st, which marks the beginning of Women's History Month, a month-long celebration to honor women's often overlooked contributions to American history, like those of Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to officially become a doctor in the United States in 1849. Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, all leaders in the women's suffrage movement. And Harriet Tubman, who led hundreds of enslaved people to freedom. But what's the history behind Women's History Month? It all began in 1978 with only a week-long celebration. It was organized by the Sonoma County Commission on Women. The week of March 8th was selected to correspond with International Women's Day, which had been celebrated around the world on March 8th since 1911. The movement began to gain momentum, and the following year, other communities and school districts initiated their own celebrations of Women's History Week. Then in 1980, the National Women's History Project lobbied for national recognition, and they were heard, because in February of that year, President Jimmy Carter issued the first proclamation, which declared the week of March 8th as National Women's History Week. 6 years later, the same organization petitioned for an expansion on the event, and in March of 1987, Congress passed Public Law 100-9, proclaiming March as Women's History Month. Now, every March and all month long, we celebrate countless extraordinary women who've earned their place at the table. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that short clip of the women's history movement. Now I'm going to show the second video called Remembering Women's History Month. Learn the importance of Women's History Month by Emily Krishbaum. TED Talk. She's from Remembering the Ladies, her nonprofit. Very interesting story and history of women since the Revolutionary War.
In the early 1780s, Massachusetts created their first state constitution. Now, this constitution was created just years after the Declaration of Independence, and you can tell because it was inspired by it. In fact, in the first words that you'll read, all men are born free and equal. Now, at this time, it was the tradition, the way that you got this information out, this legislation, these laws, is that you would read it in the town square. When it was read in the town square one day, there's an enslaved woman by the name of Mum Bet who's walking through that town square. And in her enslaved state, she hears these words that everyone in Massachusetts is born free and equal. She's confused, obviously. But instead of living with said confusion, she takes it to court. She took her slaveholder, John Ashley, to court, sued for her freedom, and her lawyer argued that she should be free because the institution itself is unconstitutional in the state of Massachusetts. And she wins. Now, does this story matter? It might not, if young girls don't hear about it. Currently, less than 10% of the history that's taught in American history classrooms is about women. Now, there are two interesting things about this. One, of the women that are required to be taught in the classroom, two of them are Molly Pitcher and Rosie the Riveter. They weren't even real human beings. They were made up. They were fictional. Now, of course, they're symbolic from women that did exist during that time, but it begs the question, then why not speak about the actual women? Also, of that 10%, almost 60% of that 10% talks about women in the role of the helpmate, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the home, helping out the husband. And of course, women made homes, but they also made history. As we know, stories matter. They're incredibly important. We share them with loved ones, we laugh about them, they inspire us, and they provide meaning in our lives. Now, there's this whole body of research that suggests that if you're not a part of the information that you consume, whether it's what you watch or what you read in the classroom, it suggests that you're not as important. You consider yourself not as important or capable or competent. Currently, it takes a woman to hear about 6 times, "You should run for political office," before she starts to think, "I should run for political office." Less women negotiate salaries, and even less women will apply for a job if they don't believe that they have 100% of the qualifications. Maybe if young girls start to see themselves in the pages of yesterday, they'll believe in their capacity for all of their tomorrows. I started a nonprofit called Remember the Ladies. And one of the things that we focus on doing is positioning teachers and school districts to incorporate more women's history into American history classrooms, because you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think it's important for young girls and young boys to see the capacity of women. Now, we do this by supplementing textbooks and supplementing current lesson plans, because this isn't about rewriting history. Instead, it's about expanding the lens, the director's cut, if you will. Because while Megan Rapinoe and Serena Williams and Ruth Bader Ginsburg are incredibly inspiring and extraordinary humans, what young girls need to realize is that this has always been their lineage. This is nothing new, and it will always be their legacy. In spring of 1776, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson are in Philadelphia. They're talking about declaring independence from that of Great Britain. And they're not simply talking about separating from Great Britain, but instead they are suggesting that we should declare our independence because we believe in this set of principles, that all men are created equal and have certain inalienable rights, and some of those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That regardless of your bloodline, regardless of who your parents were, regardless of where you were born into the society, that you are indeed equal. They were figuring out the language that they wanted to use and how they were going to get that done. Meanwhile, John Adams' wife is in Massachusetts holding down the farm with 4 children and keeping the smallpox epidemic at bay, and trying to feed those children through the winter while the British have blocked the ports in Boston. So the only food that they have is what they grew from the summer before, trying to avoid battles and any abuse that the British might provide. And so Abigail had her 2 cents for her husband as he suggested that they were writing this declaration. She said, in this extraordinary code of laws, I ask that you remember the ladies, and I ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that interesting video, learning about women from the 1700s, about Mrs. Adams, John Adams' wife, telling John Adams to remember the ladies when they wrote the Declaration of Independence for equal rights, as well as the movement that began from the Declaration of Independence that led on from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and now from the 21st century. I hope you enjoy this video, Confession of a Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. Learn more about inclusive feminism in the 21st century.
I am failing as a woman. I am failing as a feminist. I have passionate opinions about gender equality, but I worry that to freely accept the label of feminist would not be fair to good feminists. I'm a feminist, but I'm a rather bad one. Oh, so I call myself a bad feminist. Or at least I wrote an essay, and then I wrote a book called Bad Feminist, and then in interviews, people started calling me the bad feminist. So, what started as a bit of an inside joke with myself and a willful provocation has become a thing. Let me take a step back. When I was younger, mostly in my teens and 20s, I had strange ideas about feminists as hairy, angry, man-hating, sex-hating women, as if those are bad things. These days, I look at how women are treated the world over, and anger in particular seems like a perfectly reasonable response. But back then, I worried about the tone people used when suggesting I might be a feminist. The feminist label was an accusation. It was an F word and not a nice one. I was labeled a woman who doesn't play by the rules, who expects too much, who thinks far too highly of myself by daring to believe I am equal, superior to a man. You don't want to be that rebel woman until you realize that you very much are that woman and cannot imagine being anyone else. As I got older, I began to accept that I am indeed a feminist and a proud one. I hold certain truths to be self-evident. Women are equal to men. We deserve equal pay for equal work. We have the right to move through the world as we choose, free from harassment or violence. We have the right to easy, affordable access to birth control and reproductive services. We have the right to make choices about our bodies free from legislative oversight or evangelical doctrine. We have the right to respect. There's more. When we talk about the needs of women, we have to consider the other identities we inhabit. We are not just women. We are people with different bodies, gender expressions, faiths, sexualities, class backgrounds, abilities, and so much more. We need to take into account these differences and how they affect us as much as we account for what we have in common. Without this kind of inclusion, our feminism is nothing. I hold these truths to be self-evident, but let me be clear. I'm a mess. I am full of contradictions. There are many ways in which I'm doing feminism wrong. I have another confession. When I drive to work, I listen to thuggish rap at a very loud volume. Even though the lyrics are degrading to women, these lyrics offend me to my core. The classic Ying Yang Twins song, Salt Shaker, it is amazing. Make it work with your wet t-shirt. Bitch, you gotta shake it till your camel starts to hurt. Think about it. Poetry, right? I am utterly mortified by my music choices. I firmly believe in man work, which is anything I don't want to do, including all domestic tasks, but also bug killing, trash removal, lawn care, and vehicle maintenance. I want no part of any of that. Pink is my favorite color. I enjoy fashion magazines and pretty things. I watch The Bachelor and romantic comedies, and I have absurd fantasies about fairy tales coming true. Some of my transgressions are more flagrant. If a woman wants to take her husband's name, that is her choice, and it is not my place to judge. If a woman chooses to stay home to raise her children, I embrace that choice too. The problem is not that she makes herself economically vulnerable in that choice. The problem is that our society is set up to make women economically vulnerable when they choose. Let's deal with that. I reject the mainstream feminism that has historically ignored or deflected the needs of women of color, working class women, queer women, and transgender women in favor of supporting white, middle, and upper class straight women. Listen, if that's good feminism, I am a very bad feminist. There's also this. As a feminist, I feel a lot of pressure. We have this tendency to put visible feminists on a pedestal. We expect them to pose perfectly. When they disappoint us, we gleefully knock them from the very pedestal we put them on. Like I said, I am a mess. Consider me knocked off that pedestal before you ever try to put me up there. Too many women, particularly groundbreaking women and industry leaders, are afraid to be labeled as feminists. They're afraid to stand up and say, yes, I am a feminist, for fear of what that label means, for fear of being unable to live up to unrealistic expectations. Take, for example, Beyoncé, or as I call her, the goddess. She has emerged in recent years as a visible feminist. At the 2014 MTV Video Music Awards, she performed in front of the word feminist 10 feet high. It was a glorious spectacle to see this pop star openly embracing feminism and letting young women and men know that being a feminist is something to celebrate. As the moment faded, cultural critics began endlessly debating whether or not Beyoncé was indeed a feminist. They graded her feminism instead of simply taking a grown, accomplished woman at her word. We demand perfection from feminists because we are still fighting for so much, we want so much, we need so damn much. We go far beyond reasonable, constructive criticism to dissecting any given woman's feminism, tearing it apart until there's nothing left. We do not need to do that. Bad feminism, or really more inclusive feminism, is a starting point, but what happens next? We go from acknowledging our imperfections to accountability, or walking the walk and being a little bit brave. If I listen to degrading music, I am creating a demand for which artists are more than happy to contribute a limitless supply. These artists are not going to change how they talk about women in their songs until we demand that change by affecting their bottom line. Certainly, it is difficult. Why must it be so catchy? It's hard to make the better choice, and it is so easy to justify a lesser one. But when I justify bad choices, I make it harder for women to achieve equality, the equality that we all deserve, and I need to own that. I think of my nieces, ages 3 and 4. They are gorgeous and headstrong, brilliant girls who are a whole lot of brave. I want them to thrive in a world where they are valued for the powerful creatures they are. I think of them, and suddenly the better choice becomes far easier to make. We can all make better choices. We can change the channel when a television show treats sexual violence against women like sport, Game of Thrones. We can change the radio station when we hear songs that treat women as nothing. We can spend our box office dollars elsewhere when movies don't treat women as anything more than decorative objects. We can stop supporting professional sports where the athletes treat their partners like punching bags. In other ways, men, and especially straight white men, can say, no, I will not publish with your magazine or participate in your project or otherwise work with you until you include a fair number of women, both as participants and decision makers. I won't work with you until your publication or your organization is more inclusive of all kinds of difference. Those of us who are underrepresented and invited to participate in such projects can also decline to be included until more of us are invited through the glass ceiling and we are tokens no more. Without these efforts, without taking these stands, our accomplishments are going to mean very little. We can commit these small acts of bravery and hope that our choices trickle upward to the people in power: editors, movie and music producers, CEOs, lawmakers, the people who can make bigger, braver choices to create lasting, meaningful change. We can also boldly claim our feminism, good, bad, or anywhere in between. The last line of my book, Bad Feminist, says, I would rather be a bad feminist than no feminist at all. This is true for so many reasons, but first and foremost, I say this because once upon a time, my voice was stolen from me, and feminism helped me to get my voice back. There was an incident. I call it an incident so I can carry the burden of what happened. Some boys broke me when I was so young I did not know what boys can do to break a girl. They treated me like I was nothing. I began to believe I was nothing. They stole my voice, and in the after, I did not dare to believe that anything I might say could matter. But I had writing, and there I wrote myself back together. I wrote myself toward a stronger version of myself. I read the words of women who might understand a story like mine, and women who looked like me and understood what it was like to move through the world with brown skin. I read the words of women who showed me I was not nothing. I learned to write like them, and then I learned to write as myself. I found my voice again, and I started to believe that my voice is powerful beyond measure. Through writing and feminism, I also found that if I was a little bit brave, another woman might hear me and see me and recognize that none of us are the nothing the world tries to tell us we are. In one hand, I hold the power to accomplish anything, and in my other, I hold the humbling reality that I am just one woman. I am a bad feminist. I am a good woman. I am trying to become better in how I think and what I say and what I do without abandoning everything that makes me human. I hope that we can all do the same. I hope that we can all be a little bit brave when we most need such bravery.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that interesting and very informative TED Talk by Roxane Gay, a famous author, who talked about feminism being more inclusive in the 21st century, from women from all walks of life, sexuality, gender, religion, nationality. Because when you look at the four waves, the first wave was the women's suffrage movement, the second wave was the 1960s about equal pay, the third wave was about the 1990s about sexual assault, and now the fourth wave of feminism is being inclusive for all women from all walks of life and honoring their accomplishments.
Everybody, this is Miss Liz from the Hightstown branch with another round of Who is Trivia for you. This trivia is based on the children's biography series Who Is or Who Was. And this month we are focusing on Women's History Month. So our questions will be about some famous women throughout history. If you're interested in checking out any of these titles or any of our other Who Is, Who Was biographies or the other popular series, What Was, Where Is, and What is the Story Behind, all from the same HQ publishers, please check out your local branch or our website at www.mcl.org, where you can find all of the books in the series. So to play along, you can either give yourself 1 point for each question or just play for fun. All right, let's see what you know and what you'll learn. What young deaf-blind woman said, "I should be as free as another" upon being accepted into Radcliffe College? Was it Rachel Carson, Judy Blume, Helen Keller, or Anne Frank? And if you said Helen Keller, you were correct. At age 2, Helen became very sick. When she recovered, she was both deaf and blind. By age 5, Helen had made up over 50 signs to communicate with her family. Helen liked to play pranks on her family and once locked her mother in their pantry. She later met her teacher, Anne Sullivan, who's pictured down here with Helen, who helped her learn sign language by signing on Helen's hands so she could feel the sign, since she couldn't see it. Helen Keller wrote 4 books about her life and her teacher, Anne Sullivan. She starred in a movie about her life, and her life story has been turned into a Broadway play as well. What was Mother Teresa's given first name? So she became known as Mother Teresa as time went on, but what was her name when she was born? Was it Drona, Agnes, Palma, or Sabella? And if you said Agnes, then you were correct. She was born Agnes Bogiou in Macedonia, which is the country next to Greece. She learned from her family that it was important to help people who were less fortunate. Her family would offer meals and a place to stay to anyone in their town who was needy. When she was a teenager, she taught children in her church's Sunday school. Mother Teresa lived and worked with poor people in Calcutta, India for almost 50 years. Next, what year did tennis star sisters Venus and Serena Williams team up to win an Olympic gold medal in doubles? Was it 1985, 1997, 2000, 2010? And the answer is 2000. Venus is 1 year older than her sister Serena. When the girls were 11 and 10, their family moved to Florida to work with a talented tennis coach. The sisters won their second Olympic gold medal in doubles tennis in 2008. Venus and Serena's father got the girls started in tennis after watching a tennis match on TV and learning that the winner of the match would win money. He also wrote a book about what and how to teach his kids tennis. Venus started playing against other kids in tennis tournaments when she was 9 years old. Next, along with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, this woman helped form the National Woman Suffrage Association in 1869. Was it Florence Nightingale, Ada Lovelace, Susan B. Anthony, or Abigail Adams? And if you said Susan B. Anthony, you were correct. Women's suffrage meant women's right to vote. Susan was born in Massachusetts in 1820. During Susan B. Anthony's life, women could not own property themselves or vote in government elections. Susan was a teacher for a while, as that was one of the only jobs open to women at the time. She later began to speak out for women's right to vote and was once arrested for voting. Susan also helped with the Underground Railroad that helped bring slaves from the South to freedom in the North. Next, This scientist's observations helped prove that, like humans, chimpanzees could use tools. Was the scientist Jane Goodall, Ada Lovelace, Marie Curie, or Rachel Carson? And the answer is Jane Goodall. Jane's father gave her a stuffed animal chimpanzee when she was 1 year old. She has loved chimps ever since and still has a stuffed animal. Jane's mother was an author and her father was an engineer who later became a race car driver. One of Jane's favorite books was The Story of Dr. Dolittle, about a man who went to Africa and could talk to wild animals. At age 23, Jane went to Africa for the first time. She lived in a tent and spent hours each day watching chimpanzees in the forest. Next we have, which First Lady of the United States attended 2 Ivy League schools, Princeton and Harvard Law? Was it Jacqueline Kennedy, Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, or Michelle Obama? And the answer is Michelle Obama. As a child, Michelle loved playing board games like Monopoly with her family. In 6th grade, Michelle was admitted into a gifted program that allowed her to take college classes. One class that she took was biology. She went to a high school for gifted students, and it took 1.5 hours for her to get there. After law school, Michelle Obama got a job as a lawyer and worked on legal contracts for toys and books about the children's TV character Barney the dinosaur, who you can see pictured here. After her husband, Barack Obama, was elected president, Michelle began to work on programs to help keep kids healthy. She focused on healthy eating and fun ways for kids and families to get exercise. Next, this Queen of England ruled for 41 years, getting England through the plague and a war with Spain. Was it Queen Victoria, Mary Queen of Scots, Queen Elizabeth, or Princess Diana? And the answer is Queen Elizabeth. So this is the first Queen Elizabeth. There's currently Queen Elizabeth II as Queen of England now. Queen Elizabeth was the daughter of King Henry VIII of England and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. She never married, even though many people encouraged her to, because they didn't think a woman could rule a country without a man's help. As a teenager, she was imprisoned in the Tower of London by her half-sister, Queen Mary. You can see a picture of the Tower of London fortress here. Queen Elizabeth enjoyed watching performances of William Shakespeare's plays. She helped finance explorers who sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World, or as we know it now, America. Next, which famous touring show did Annie Oakley perform with Sitting Bull? Was it the Sellers Brothers Circus, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show, Barnum and Bailey, or Cirque du Soleil? And if you said Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show, you are correct. Annie was 25 years old when she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show with her husband, Frank. Annie and Frank performed with the Wild West Show in New York City, London, and Paris. The Wild West Show was a combination of rodeo, theater, and circus, and it showed other Americans what the Wild West of the country was like. The Native American chief Sitting Bull got along well with Annie Oakley and joined the cast of the Wild West Show because of her. In Amelia Earhart's time, what was the special name for the pilots who did tricks in air shows? Were they called tricksters, barnstormers, flying monkeys, or sky clowns? And the answer is barnstormers. After watching an air show on Christmas Day in 1920, Amelia decided she wanted to become a pilot. Amelia's flying lessons cost $1 per minute, which would be the same as $14.61 per minute today. So a 30-minute flying lesson would cost $438 today. Amelia and other women pilots started an airline on the East Coast called the New York, Philadelphia, and Washington Airway that flew between those cities. At least 1,500 people flew on the airline in the first 10 days it was in operation. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly alone across the Atlantic Ocean. After completing that record, she was asked to design clothes for Macy's department stores. Next, in 1843, Belle, who never had a last name, changed her name to Sojourner Truth. What does sojourner mean? A dancer, someone known famously for their dance performances. A traveler, someone who never stays in the same place for very long. A teacher, someone who loves to teach children new things. A scientist, someone who loves to create experiments and inventions. And if you said sojourner means traveler, you are right. Sojourner Truth was born in 1797 in New York to James and Betsy, who were slaves. She was called Isabella and given the nickname Belle. Sojourner Truth grew up speaking Dutch, since that was what her master, Johann Hardenberg, spoke. After being freed as an adult, Sojourner Truth started a shelter for homeless women in New York City. At age 43, Sojourner Truth left New York City and became a traveling preacher. She changed her name from Isabella, or Belle, the name given to her when she was a slave, to Sojourner Truth, a name that she picked completely for herself. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new, and feel free to check out any of the Who Is, Who Was books at your local branch.
How do we celebrate moving forward? Discover some female artists. Listen to female musicians that you like, and learn more about women history. I'll provide 2 more websites for you to learn more about that. And the last but not least, we can know more about the suffrage movement.org memorial status. If you go to that website, it just opened up last year, the memorial for suffrage, and they have 3 statues of famous women from all walks of life there that are famous for starting and promoting women's suffrage. Well, I hope you enjoyed this program. And if you have any questions, give me a call or email at rmillerchat@aol.com. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.